Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Cameron Grimsley. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. For this month's video essay, I wanted to talk about how we watch and connect with movies. Or rather, how I, with my weird brain, watch and connect with movies. I want to talk with you about a thought and a connection I made when I first saw Mad Max Fury Road. As I was sitting in the dark theater, scarfing down popcorn, having the time of my life, there comes a moment in the film where Max and his compatriots turn around from their chase and decide to head back where they started. This was an epic and exciting moment in the film where the characters decide they can no longer keep running but must take their destiny in their own hands. And for some reason, it had me thinking of a black and white Italian neo-realist film from 1957. In Michelangelo Antonioni's Il Grido, the main character goes on a long and existential journey only to get to an arbitrary point and decide to go back home. This is all the two films really have in common: people traveling to a point and then turning around. And yet for days, I thought about these two films and that connection and couldn't let it go. Would I even notice this connection if I hadn't studied abroad in Italy, humble brag, and taken a class about Antonioni? Who knows? But the thought stuck in my head and it festered. It just made sense to me that these two films were related in some way and meant something together. On the surface, these two films have nothing in common, but it is exactly on the surface where they have their first link, and by that I mean their connection is in the earth. In Il Grido, Aldo takes off after realizing the woman he loves has been having an affair. He follows a path along the river as he tries to understand and find meaning in his life. Antonioni started his career as a documentary filmmaker, and this style of shooting carried over to his narrative work. As Seymour Chapman put it, the photography evokes the lines and masses of the river in a myriad of middle-range gray tones, perfecting the nuances. The way he films the river is at times beautiful, at times boring, at times ugly, but always real. In shooting Fury Road, George Miller wanted to make the film as real as possible. For a modern summer blockbuster, there is an astonishing lack of CGI. Most of the stunts were real. Those guys on poles? Practical. Flipping the war rig? Practical. The guitar shredding? Practical. This attention to realism extends to the shooting style. He makes the world feel real. The dirt, the earth, the desert. It all feels very lived in and practical. This dedication to a seemingly real aesthetic is at the heart of what both films are about. For Il Grido, it's not just seeing, but feeling the man Aldo and the world and understanding that he's lost. For Fury Road is about making the audience feel the struggle to survive. What it means to survive and live in the world are themes that both films are interested in. And in both films, this theme is symbolized by water. For Aldo, in Il Grido, it's all about the river that guides his journey and leads him through his existential crisis of trying to find himself. For Max and Furiosa, it's the absence of water and the hope that the green place represents that keeps them pressing forward. And it's also the water that Immortan Joe hoards that represents the power that both characters lack in this world and are fighting to achieve. And the thematic similarities don't stop there. Both films are interested in a form of fading masculinity. In Il Grido, when Aldo finds out his lover, with whom he has a daughter, is in love with another man, he begins his journey. This is a journey for Aldo to find out his new place in the world, but it is also a journey in which the film explores what it means to be a man in post-war Italy. In his own words, Antonioni said that man is straddled with a rigid and stereotyped morality, which all of us recognize as such and yet sustain out of cowardice or sheer laziness. A heavy baggage of emotional traits which cannot exactly be called old or outmoded, but rather unsuited and inadequate. They condition us without offering us any help. They create problems without suggesting any possible solutions, and yet it seems that man will not rid himself of this baggage. He reacts, he loves, he hates, he suffers under the sway of moral forces and myths, which today, when we are at the threshold of reaching the moon, should not be the same as those that prevailed at the time of Homer. So it sounds like Antonioni defined the term toxic masculinity about 30 years before the term was actually coined. And although these remarks were made when discussing his film La Ventura, I think the point still applies. Along his travels, Aldo meets many women, an old lover, a gas station attendant, and a prostitute. Within each of these relationships, Aldo is unable to connect until he turns around and heads back for the one woman he loved. The modern man continues to move forward but can't find his place and longs to return to how things were. But when Aldo does return, he climbs the tower at his work in order to recreate a treasured memory of the view of his home, and he falls to his death. It is unclear whether Aldo falls because of dizziness and vertigo or whether he intentionally commits suicide. Despite the ambiguity, the message is clear. The old version of masculinity is dying. And while Il Grido acknowledges a changing landscape, it doesn't answer the questions of how to survive the change. It just shows that living through that change can be painful. Fury Road has a similar exploration of masculinity in a changing world. In making the film, George Miller consulted with noted feminist and playwright Eve Ensler, writer of the Vagina Monologues. She came to the set in Nambia for a week to discuss with Miller, as well as all the actresses playing the wives of Morton Joe, what that experience would be like. As she said, what would their attachment to their captor be like? How hard would it be for them to sleep right after all this time being oppressed? What would be the experiences for other women around the world? And also, what is sexual slavery on a much broader level? The political implications of it, the connection between sexual violence. I shared my experiences of people being in refugee camps where women had come from being held in rape camps. We talked about what happens to women when they begin to come into their power and what happens when they come into resistance. Also, what all this would look like in terms of how they dressed and how they moved. Miller's attention to detail and realism in this aspect paid off as much as it did with the stunt work, with critics calling it a feminist anthem and saying it shows the horror of sexism and the necessity of freedom from patriarchy.
Miss Kitty! You cannot own a human being. Sooner or later, someone pushes back. Where is she taking them? She didn't take them. They begged her to go. Where is she taking them? A long way from you.
So while Fury Road may explore similar themes, it also comes up with better answers than El Grido. The not-so-hidden secret about Fury Road is that it isn't about Mad Max at all. The film is really about Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron. It is about her journey to get back home and to help free the brides of the evil in Morton Joe. Max gets swept up along the way and ends up helping, but that was never his plan, and he's reluctant at first. And in this way, the film is asking, in this new modern world, what does it mean to be a man? And in some ways, the journey of the film is a journey to answer that question. When Max and Furiosa first meet, they don't trust each other. They fight and Max steals her truck. But he only travels a few feet before the truck stops and he realizes that only Furiosa knows how to drive it, and an uncomfortable, unstable bond is formed. As the film goes on and the two characters drive and fight alongside each other, a mutual trust and possibly friendship is formed. This is culminated in the moment where, having already missed twice, Max doesn't want to waste any more bullets, and he hands his gun over to Furiosa. She steadies the gun on his shoulder and makes the shot. And this moment has become clear. Where do men fit in a modern feminist world? We become partners, and we help each other, and we always have someone there to take the shot.
At least that way, we might be able to, together, come across some kind of redemption.
This is one of the things I love most about the cinema. More than any other medium or art form, it reflects and pays homage to itself. It can be a relationship with an audience, as well as other filmmakers and films through time. And if that audience is weird like me, they can create conversation and connections between films, whether they were meant to be there or not. So if we can notice and understand these connections, we can bring a deeper and more substantial meaning to our own film viewing experience. Did George Miller intentionally reference El Grido in making Fury Road? Has he ever even seen the film? I don't know. It doesn't matter. What matters is that, as an audience member, I was engaged in the film and cared about what it was trying to say. So I hope you enjoyed this little exploration of my weird brain and the odd connections it makes at times. In the comments, let me know what you think, and let me know if you've come up with any odd connections yourself. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching. Bye!